And let's get ready for the first playoff of the day. We have a stellar panel of speakers for this session. Let me invite upon stage Rahul Munjal, CMD Hero Future Energies, Vibha Dhawan, DG TERI, Professor Dr. Andreas Bett, Director Fraunhofer, ISC, Dr. Julian Hochscherf, ESG and Sustainability Manager, HEP Solar, and we have Peter Hartmann, Management Board Member, Pre-Zero.
So we have a slightly different format at the summit here. Since we are in a football city, we are going to be doing this as a sort of match. I'm going to be the referee. You're all subject matter experts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by telling our audience here a little story. So at the beginning of this year, and especially people from India will identify, I'm Padmaja, by the way. Hi, Padmaja. And I'm going to be moderating this session. In January this year, we had the consecration of the Ram Mandir, which is, of course, very sacred to people in India. And the first announcement that the Prime Minister made soon after the consecration of the Ram Mandir happened is that he's going to install, our country is going to install solar panels on 1 crore rooftops across the country. The reason why I tell this story is because it speaks of the importance that green energy is given in the country. So you have a civilizational moment that has been consecrated in Ayodhya, and then you speak about the future of the country. Keeping that in mind, we also have this struggle happening between the developing and the developed world. So to kick off proceedings, I want to first start by asking Ms. Vibha Dhawan. You know, we are coming off on the back of COP29. Now, I'm going to ask questions purely from a layperson's point of view. The impression is that the developing world often has to shoulder the burden of what the developed countries are already doing. All of these meetings, these summits that we have globally, has that managed to address the imbalance?
Well, as we all know, COP meetings are held every year, and there are serious negotiations when we are the government's representatives are there, and they discuss about what is climate change, how are we moving, and what needs to be done. Now, over a period of time, it has become very clear that we are making promises in terms of, last year it was loss and damage fund and implementation of that, but then the money which is committed never comes on the table. So it's very clear, but the message or why the COP still remains very important is that the developed part of the world has reached certain stage of development in terms of greening their procedures as well. Like, for example, when we talk of cross-boundary carbon tax and other things, it is that the developed part has technology. They can adopt that. But that doesn't mean that the developing part of the world starts paying perhaps as taxation for their development.
Professor Bett, but do you think the gap between intention and deliverables still hasn't been plugged just as yet?
I mean, I'm coming from research, so we are looking always forward. And we heard, God, we need money at the end. And our research is devoted to reduce the cost. I mean, look back 10, 20 years ago, solar energy was much too costly. So due to research and innovation, we are now in a situation that we have a source of renewable energy, and we have, in addition, wind and others. But it's important to look that we bring down the costs, that we can do a financing. And I agree with that. We need, in a certain way, a financial structure to really make it happen. But we must also look into the future. And that is why I really liked what you mentioned. We should look in the future and not look back what was our fault in the past. Because developing countries are in some better shape, actually, to start with new technology, whereas the developed countries sometimes are very heavily struggling with old stuff and are not ready to proceed fast enough.
Everyone has the realization, Mr. Munjal, that we need to look to the future. I was looking at our budget document. Speaking for India, we had a huge outlay. We had the Prime Minister Surya Yojana, like I mentioned. He said 1 crore solar panels we need to put. But then you have a new US president who's saying, I'm going to drill, drill, drill. how do you look into the future when you feel, here we are, putting our shoulder to the wheel, and then there is the world's largest democracy, which is saying, we're going to drill. So you're pushing us 3 steps back. How does that work?
So he's actually saying drill, baby, drill. So it's not drill.
I wasn't sure that would be apt for this audience.
Yeah. So this is not the first time he's been the president, right? He was the president earlier as well. And I'll come to that in a little bit. But you must understand, for me personally, I'm a climate optimist. I know there's a problem. I know the world is probably already at 1.4. But I know if we spend some money, the biggest form of carbon emissions is the grid, is energy. Of course, transportation is another hard-to-abate sector, is the third, right? But for the grid, today we have solutions in wind, solar, and battery storage, etc. So there is technology, it needs to be used. Now, last year, the world commissioned or added 530 gigawatts of renewables. We're sitting in Germany today. German grid, if I'm not mistaken, is 250 gigawatts only. So we added more than the German grid to the world. So the world is spending money, and a lot of momentum is already there. So while he was the president last time around, Texas became the largest, I think, solar as well as wind producer in the US. So how much of a negative impact will he have? I'm not sure. There will be a negative impact for sure, but will it be to the tune of our fears in our mind? I don't think so. I think we sometimes overemphasize the importance, while he's very, very important, don't get me wrong, in any way or form. But we underemphasize the importance of the rest of the world. While the rest of the world understand what needs to be done, they understand we need $1 trillion every year. That's what they're talking about in COP today. I don't know how successful it will be, but we'll know in the next couple of days, I guess next 24, 48 hours. But if we're talking about to the tune of $1 trillion a year, it's going to come from all parts of the world.
So you think a lot of this could also be political rhetoric, and in reality, like you mentioned the example of Texas, the reality is a shade different from what is said in the election campaign?
Always, always.
Good to know that it's not limited to India alone. All right, my next question, again, some data about Germany. Germany's electricity supply and the share of renewables in electricity has steadily grown over the last few years. The data which I was reading was that it was from around 6% in 2000, and it has grown to 38% in 2018, which basically means that they had a target of 35% for 2020, and that has already been breached. So 57% of Germany's electricity is now covered by renewables. What I want to ask our next speaker, Peter Hartmann, what I want to ask you is, how was this made possible?
Well, it's made possible by legislatory change, actually, that really pushed us very hard in that direction. But to be honest, this gives, for us in the industry, also a lot of problems. The electric matrix of Germany is changing with a lot of problems for the industrial companies. But what we do need, I think, to make that change happen, because I'm also a climate optimist, but I think we have to do a change. So what we need is a stable, we need stability in the nets, and we need a clear government, we need clear regulations of where to go to. That's, I think, the most important thing. We all know we have to change. And also when you ask about Trump, I think it really doesn't matter what they do in the US, because we have to act. We have one planet, and we have to act now. But and I can even understand that it's really difficult to get the right legislation, to get the economic suspects to move in that direction. So yeah, to answer your question, it's a big step forward, what we have achieved here, but still, to be honest, I think it's also a painful change that we are living right now in Germany, but there is no alternative in my point of view.
It's a good example to have set, and I will come back to you, Mr. Munjal, on that. What is the acceptability in India? But before that, Dr. Julian Hochscherf, this whole thing between the developed world and the developing economies, Is there now a consensus that you cannot have large countries or large economies bullying the rest of the world into matching up or into contributing greatly to the climate goals while not being as good or as great a contributor themselves?
My perspective on this topic is that in Germany we speak much too often about the 2% that we contribute in greenhouse gas emissions per year. What we should rather speak about is our historical responsibility for CO2 emissions, right? So our welfare is based on historical CO2 emissions. So this is why we have to not hide between these 2% that we add annually to global CO2 emissions, but we have to take responsibility for the historical emissions. This is what leads us to this debate of increasing the share of renewable energies, to think or rethink business models, to think about circularity in business models, to think about how to integrate biodiversity protection measures, because there are links between sustainability topics, and it's not just about CO2. It's about so much more if you speak about a sustainable transition and transition of business models. So you have to make the step from linearity in business models to circularity in business models. And also for the solar industry, for the renewable energy industry, this is true in order not to make the same mistakes again that you have been doing in the 1950s when you relied on, or when you build up your wealth on fossil fuels. So this is really from my perspective, the main responsibility that we have to take, and we are taking this responsibility in the global north, not in the speed that is needed on a global scale to solve issues on a global scale, but we have to take the decisive steps.
Thank you very much. It has been a wonderful session. I really wish we had way more time, because I don't think that's a problem or discussion. We can, get into one discussion alone. But thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us. A huge round of applause. Thank you.